filing status and who you can be claiming. Let's talk about some good stuff, some credits. Our clients love credits. So we got some common credits over here, the child tax credit and additional child tax credit, okay? Child dependent care, earned income, two types of education credits, the lifetime learners credits and the American Opportunity Tax credits, as well as the residential energy credits. Those are both solar credits as well as some new home improvement credits that we're going to go over. And then we have the clean vehicle credits. These are going to be your EVs. Okay? We've got some less common credits, your adoption credits. I put some credits on here that you may hear, but they're not real in a sense. The credit for the elderly or disabled, fuel credits, foreign tax credits, and the mortgage interest credit. That is a real one. The mortgage interest credit is a real one. We'll get to that one, but they're much less common. These two in particular, the credit for the elderly and disabled, when we get to that, I don't consider that a real credit. Same thing with the credit for fuels. It is just so few people will get to take advantage of those. All right, so let's start going over our common credits for the kids. This is what everybody cares about. This is what all parents care about, at least. That what is the child tax credit? So it must be for the child tax credit, for the good stuff, for that $2,000 credit, must be a qualifying child. Okay? Any other dependents are going to be the other dependent credit. So if it's anything other than a child, a parent, a niece or a nephew, anything other than a child is going to be an other dependent, only $500. And I didn't put the age on here. I really should have. So on the child tax credit, this is for kids under the age of 17. Okay? And under the age of 17 means that when these kids turn 17 years old, they're out of their credit. They're into that $500 credit. They're not even turning 18. Okay? And I want to take a look. Care credit? No, I want to do. Where is my child tax credit? 11.7. And yeah, this one also has the Social Security requirements. So not only must the child have a Social Security number, but both taxpayer and spouse, must have valid Social Security numbers to get any credit. Okay. Now you may file a married filing separate return to not have the spouse without a social and still get this credit. I have done that for people, but again, it is the married filing separate, and it ain't as good. Okay. So must be a qualifying child. And this is for kids under the age of 17 for the child tax credit. Okay, so the AGI for this one, it's a nice big one. Everybody, a lot of people can be getting this credit. Married filing joint up to $400K. 200K for all others. So you're single, you're head of household. You can be making bank before they start to phase out the child tax credit, and it doesn't phase out very quickly. It's a pretty small phase out, a slow phase out, I believe. Okay, so the if you don't use all the child tax credit, all of this $2,000 as a non-refundable credit, lowering your tax liability, you can convert any unused credit to additional child tax credit and have it be refundable. Okay. However, that caps out at $1,700 per child. Okay, and so for the refundable portion of the credit, maxes out at $1,700 per child and has work requirements. So you must have earned income, more than 15% above $2,500. So what does that mean? That if you wanted to get a $1,000 credit for something like this, you would want to have something to the effect of 15% of 1,000. I don't think I can do that in my head. But you'd need you'd really want like $10,000 to get the maximum part of this credit. I've definitely seen people that only make $5,000 or $6,000 that are not even getting their $1,700 for additional child tax credit. Okay. If you have unearned income, so back in 2020 and 21 when we're seeing high unemployment numbers, that was keeping people from getting the refundable part of the credit. So they have income, but it wouldn't be earned income. And so then they'd be filing their taxes. They would wipe out their tax liability, but expect to get something back because they've got tax credits available, but because they didn't have any earned income, it did not count towards these calculations, and they didn't get any additional child tax credit. Okay. And because additional child tax credit is a refundable type of credit, meaning that they actually will cash you out, they'll actually send you a check for the amount, we got that due diligence requirement. We got to make notes. We got to make sure that these children truly qualify. Okay, and we really just got to ask the taxpayer: are these really your kids? If they said they aren't their kids, where are the parents? Why are the parents not living with them? And you don't need to get into a very detailed conversation, but you need to find out at least a little bit. Okay, the form 8812. You guys really aren't going to be doing the 8812 by hand. Our computers are going to be doing that a lot of the time. But what I've seen over the last year or so is that the IRS itself is not filling out the 8812 correctly. So if any of your clients come in this year and say, hey, I got a letter from the IRS, they disallowed my credits, and you see it's and they particularly had other non-refundable credits, this is where you want to stop, come to me or my dad, and we'll escalate that, because we have to really teach the agent on the other end of the phone how to fill out this form. The IRS agents, they have to go through a particular procedure, and they hate it. But I know what to give them to make it easy on them. But if any of your clients get rejected, particularly say you had a miscalculation on the 8812. If the IRS says that our clients, that we made a miscalculation on the 8812, we're going to argue with them about that. I think the IRS is doing it wrong. Okay. All right. I think Mel, do we have a question for me? I think I see your hand up. Okay, I can't unmute you, so if you do have a question, come off mute and we'll answer that. But Mel, I did work with some of your clients definitely that had that happen, and I'm currently in a resolution with one of your clients where we submitted the first set of documents, the IRS approved half of what we wanted, but there were 7 kids total. They only did 3 the first time. Yeah, Mel,
Yeah.
So I just worked with them a couple weeks ago, and I got the agent to understand there was a total of 7 qualifying, we're going to call them dependents in this case, 7 qualifying dependents, and we'd like the IRS to instate them all. And the agent on the phone said, oh yeah, I can see that on the original return it had 7, but when we made our changes it only had 3. So, but they're working on it. It'll take them a couple weeks.
Is there a number for dependent to be claimed? Like if you
That's an excellent question. For the child tax credit, for the additional child tax credit, no. There's no limit. The more kids you have, the more credit you can get. Okay?
Sam,
yes.
The reason why I raised my hand
yes.
is the age you said is under 17, but
yes.
on the slide number 12,
yep.
it said 19.
Under age 19. And that is a difference between the qualifying child test and the test for the credit itself.
That sucks.
It sucks. It's so bad.
I was like, yay, 19.
No,
okay, never mind.
No, they are still a qualifying child. They are still a member of the household and everything. They still go on as a dependent, but that little checkbox, the left and right checkbox on the dependent, it'll switch that checkbox to the not as good one, to the other dependent, in the year they turn 17. Not even gonna wait till they're 18. Not even year.
Oh, so they didn't even decide to raise the
They
child
never
tax credit
did.
or the age that,
Nope.
okay.
Nope. This
Got it.
is being phased in. Like it was only 1,600 last year, and for some reason it went up to 1,700 this year. I don't know how that happened, but it was not because of a new law.
Okay.
But yes, I remember last year in the beginning of the year they were thinking about making these changes to the child tax credit, and nothing ever happened with that. But that's an excellent catch, Mel. That the age for a dependent, a qualifying child dependent, is different than the age for a child tax credit. That is bad.
Yeah, it's tricky because if you read a little bit down in the sentence, it does say 24
Yeah,
for college.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
So, all right. Additional child tax credit, 8812. This one should be pretty straightforward as long as you do your due diligence and make sure that these are the actual kids. Our computer software is going to really carry this credit for the most part. We don't have to do too much. Okay? We just want to kind of keep our eyes out. Know the two things that I want you guys to know when you're doing particularly a lower income return under 30, under 20,000, is they may not get their full refundable child tax credit because of this income requirement. Okay, and so you'll be going through a return. You say, okay, yeah, these guys should qualify for all sorts of credits, right? They're at the 20,000 range or something. They get some earned income credit, but maybe you're going to see like, oh, they're only getting 1,500 of the additional child tax credit. And if you dig into the 8812, you're going to see that their income is not high enough to capture the full amount of the credit. Yeah. So that's the thing that I want you guys to be aware about is that that income limitation. Okay. Anything else on here? Not too much. So some more credits for the kids. We know that in the beginning of the year, a big one is that earned income tax credit. You're going to have a lot of people coming in trying to get those credits early. I didn't put it in here, but these refundable tax credits, they're on the delayed schedule. They don't get their refunds will not be processed until February 15th. Okay, and so that's just something to know for any of these refundable credits. Their returns don't get processed until February 15th. If they're just getting their withholding back, their returns get filed fastest, or gets credited fastest. So what else we have? Do you have the earned income tax credit? This is the credit for low-income earners. Okay, the income. This is the highest amount, right? This is not everything. You can get earned income credit up to about $60,000 if you're married with 3 kids, but you won't be getting very much because it's a bell curve, right? As you go along, your income goes up, or the amount of credit goes up as your income goes up, and then as your income reaches about 28 to 30,000, the credit will start to trail off and go down. Okay, until it's gone completely. Okay, it can be a substantial credit. Again, we have Social Security requirements, Social Security number requirements. So both the taxpayer and the spouse, if filing jointly, must have a valid social, as well as the qualifying child must also have a valid social. Okay, and then it must be a qualifying child or a qualifying relative for earned income tax credit. That is true. It doesn't have to be a qualifying child, but they do need to have a Social Security number. Okay. Due diligence, again, because it's a refundable credit, we as preparers have that duty to ask the right questions. At this point, I've been saying that over and over again, but it's just making sure we're asking, why are these kids living with them if they're not their parents, and what have we done to document that? Okay, taxpayers must be between age 25 and 65 for their own earned income tax credit. However, if they're claiming their child's earned income tax credit, so you got a 22-year-old mom that is filing for $15,000-$16,000 of wages, they can get the earned income tax credit for their kid, but they would not get any credit for themselves. A sad one that I'm seeing is seniors right now. I've got a lot of seniors that are, really only earning in that 20,000 range, and they would be a candidate for earned income credit, but they're over 65, and so they're not getting it. There was 1 year, I think it was 21, where they took away the upper age limit, but that seems to be back, and currently right now, the Kapunas cannot get any of this earned income tax credit unless they're taking care of a younger generation. Okay? So those are the earned income tax credits. The main thing that I want you to be aware with this one is those due diligence requirements and making sure you ask those questions. And then one thing that trips me up all the time is sometimes I'll see young guys, single people that are, making right in this range that I think should get earned income tax credit, but they're too young. A 21-year-old that's working, making $18,000 should get a little bit of something. They're working, they're contributing, but they're too young, so they don't get anything. By the time they're 25, they're making enough money, they still don't get anything. Okay? We also have the education credits. So we've got the two types of education credits, the AOTC, American Opportunity Tax Credit, and the LLC, the Lifetime Learners Credit. I like to call the AOTC the good credit. I call that the good credit because it doesn't take very much money to get the maximum amount of the credit. Okay, this credit works as long as you're within the income limits, 80 to 90K for single head of household, no married filing separate. So you're not going to get this at all married filing separate. And if you're married filing joint, 160 to 180K before it phases out. Okay, the first $2,000 that you spend on this credit is reimbursed 100%, and then the remaining $2,000 that you spend on this is reimbursed at 25%. So you spend $4,000 and get a $2,500 credit. $1,500 of it is non-refundable. That'll just go against liability, and up to $1,000 is refundable if you've got if you don't have the tax liability for it. Okay, so that's the American Opportunity Tax Credit. That one's really good. It works on tuitions, fees, supplies, pretty much everything under the sun outside of housing. Okay, housing and transportation never covered. Oh, food too. Housing, transportation, and food never count. But pretty much everything else, your backpacks, your books, your computers, iPads, that can all be part of the American Opportunity Tax Credit. But it has some heavy restrictions. Can only be used the first 4 years of college. Okay? It can only be used by a single person 4 times ever. Right? And so sometimes you want to be a little bit careful on timing with that one. But because it is such a low spend, $4,000 at college, you look at a college the wrong way, they're going to charge you $4,000. So the first 4 years of a student's tuitions, books, and fees can be credited back to usually the taxpayer's parents. Okay? It is very difficult for a child going to school on their own to get this because they need to be supporting themselves to get this credit. They cannot be a dependent of another. They can't even be qualified as a dependent of another. Able to be a dependent of another. Now, that's the American Opportunity Tax Credit. Good 4 years. You use them, you burn them. That's great. Okay. Now you've got your master's degree, or you're looking to go get your master's degree. So you'd be looking at the Lifetime Learners Credit. Okay. It's got these same phase-out numbers. However, I call it the jump credit. It's not as good, right? There's no number of limits on it. You can use it as many times as you want, but you're only going to get a 20% non-refundable credit up to 10K of spending, and it's only on tuitions and fees. Your books, your laptops, your iPads, your textbooks, your backpacks are not going to count with the Lifetime Learners Credit. Okay, and because it's 20%, up to 10K, it maxes out as a $2,000 credit, and you got to spend, twice as much to get less credit. Okay, a couple of things to note on here. If the student, we want the 1098T, we want to see the 1098T from the institution to say how much did the institution receive in tuition paid. That's really going to be the number we're going to use for the LLC. For the AOTC, we're going to use that number on the 1098T, and we're going to try and find what other books, supplies, materials did the parents, we're going to say the parents have to pay for the student. Okay, let's see here. There was one more thing I wanted to say about these guys, and it just slipped my mind. So, because I can't think. For American Opportunity Tax Credit, there's a couple of stipulations. You cannot ever have been convicted of a federal drug crime. I generally ask my clients, has the student ever been convicted of a crime? They say no, and we move on. But I have had some people, oh yeah, he was convicted of. Then you got to be a little bit touchy because it is only drug crime. It is only drug crime. You can't be convicted of a federal a drug felony and get the American Opportunity Tax Credit. But if you're asking the client, have they ever been convicted of a crime, and they say no, you can move on. If they say yes, you want to be a little bit sensitive about it, but ask, was it involving drugs and drug paraphernalia? If they say no, you can move on. Yep. You'd probably want to document that because there are due diligence requirements on this. So if they do answer yes to they have been convicted of a crime, you may want to take some notes and just note in there that it was not a federal drug conviction.
So does
Yes.
that only apply for AOTC?
That only applies for AOTC.
Not
You
for
can
LLC.
you can commit all the crimes you want and still get the lifetime learner's credit. Yep. Okay. Any questions on those two guys? Oh, I remember the thing that I want to talk about. Grants, scholarships, things like that. Money that does not need to be paid back is going to lower the amount of tuition. It's going to lower the amount of tuition paid. If it is a loan and has to be paid back, doesn't affect anything. That is considered the student's paying. A loan is not considered income because the student will end up paying it back. However, it is considered being paid to the institution when the loan is taken out. Okay? So scholarships and grants offset where a loan does not. Okay? Here's some newer credits. You may start to get asked about this over the tax season. A taxpayer asking, what happens if I buy an EV? What happens if I put on solar? So these are some newer credits. They were technically around in 2023. They were around in all of 24, and we believe them to be accessible and available through 25. So, electric vehicle credit. The main one that we care about is going to be new vehicle sales. That's what most people are going to ask you about. New vehicle sales. Okay, so the phase out, pretty high income. $300,000 for a joint couple, $225K for head of household, and $150K for single or married filing separately. Okay? If they qualify for the full amount of the credit, it's $7,500. There are partial amounts. Some cars qualify for $32,500 or something like that, whatever half of this number is. That you can qualify for half if you do not meet the Made in America standards. Okay? Or if it's not a full EV, if it's like a plug-in hybrid, there's another one where you only get half of this credit. Okay? So, but to get the full amount of the credit, the MSRP, not technically the listed price, but the MSRP must be less than $80K for a van, SUV, or truck, or $55K for cars. We're going to call them cars. I don't know why they said all other vehicles, but cars. Okay? So this Made in America is a phase-in type of thing. So right now, I believe that 50, maybe as much, maybe on January 1st, it'll go to 60% of battery, raw materials, and final manufactured. 60% must be done in America. So 60% of the battery materials come from America mines, and 60% of the final production is done in U.S., Mexico, or Canada. And so how are we going to know that? How the hell are we going to know that, right? This site, fueleconomy.gov / whatever, our Drake, our tax software has a button. If you're in the electric vehicle credit section, there's a button. It'll link you right out to this website where you put in the model year and the trim level, and it will tell you whether or not it qualifies. Okay? It is not an end-all be-all list. If your client can provide you dealership from the paperwork from the dealership saying it qualifies, we could still count that. This is not an end-all be-all list. If the dealership is willing to provide written documentation, we can take that. Okay? But if the taxpayer comes in with no pieces of paper and says it was made in America, but it's not on this list, but there's no pieces of paper, we don't do it. I had somebody last year. They bought a BMW. They said, well, my dealer said I get all these good credits. The car dealership said this, of course. And I said, okay, well, here's the rules. Got to be made in America. Got to. Okay, it fits all that. Said, well, it's not on my list here, and this is not a definitive list. But can you show me anything that says this car was made in America? They said, well, let's Google it. So I Googled it. It said the car was made in Munich. Well, that's not America. That's Germany. And so he did not get the credit for this. Now, here's one thing where we're going to be the bad guys. Okay? What's supposed to happen right now is that dealerships are taking the credit, that $7,500 credit, they're taking it at the dealership, regardless of whether the person qualifies. So now come tax time, if the person doesn't qualify for the credit, it gets added back on as taxes.
The 75.
The $7,500.
The one that they already
The
took.
one they already took.
Ah.
Yeah. I bet the car dealership never told them that.
Oh.
So if they got a discount on their car for the credit at the dealership, but they did not qualify for it. Now, the car MSRP, that the dealership, they're going to know that one. The Made in America, the dealership does have to report that properly.
Correct.
It's going to be income.
Yeah.
It's going to be income. So you got single guys that are making 180 that go and get a credit on their car because they bought a nice new whatever. They might owe back that $7,500. Yeah. All right. So we really, it's not part of our worksheet. It's not part of our intake. Maybe we'll start building it into it. But electric vehicles technically need to be included on a return, regardless of if they're taking the credit now or they've already taken the credit. I've asked the IRS, how are they going to enforce this? Our clients don't tell us when they buy new vehicles. Now, maybe if they wanted the credit, they'd tell us. But if they've already got it, they're going to say, hey, I'm good. I don't need to tell my tax people that I got a new car. I already got the credit at the dealership. So I asked the IRS, how are we going to know? The IRS says they may be instituting a reject. So if a taxpayer files a return and they bought an electric vehicle and the dealership filed the paperwork with the IRS, we may be getting a reject on our computer saying that this return cannot be processed. We don't have the electric vehicle on the return. Please try again. So I don't know that that's what they're going to do, but that's what the IRS's idea is to do. Is to have a reject at the time of filing. So if you start to get weird rejects about electric vehicles, that could be what's going on here. Okay, there is also a pre-owned clean energy vehicle for vehicles less than $25,000, used vehicles. We're not going to talk about that right now. It is out there. I haven't seen anybody talking about it, doing anything about it. And the vehicle in purchase must be purchased from a dealership and must be more than 2 years old. Must be purchased from like a car dealership. Can't be a direct sale. Okay. But there are some pre-owned clean energy vehicles that if you want to look up and see what those are, that's I think it's a $4,000 credit for something like that. All right. So now we've got residential energy credit. Okay. I'm going to actually skip down to the bottom here. The bottom says solar, 30% of materials and labor that carry over. That's the main one. That's what everybody remembers. That's the solar credit. Okay, 30%. We're not talking about the state stuff right now, but for on the federal side, 30% of materials and labor, and it carries over. It's also non-refundable. Okay. Now here's the new stuff: energy efficient home improvements. Okay, it's still a 30% credit, 30% of what you spend, but it tops out. The solar you can spend, and it doesn't top out. You keep getting credits for the solar. On this energy home efficient improvements, you can go up to $600 for things like central AC, water heater, natural gas propane water heater, natural gas propane water boilers. We're not going to see that here in Hawaii, but on the mainland you have a boiler to heat your home. Okay, here's the one that I'm telling my clients for their EVs. Okay, not for this EV credit here, but a lot of my clients are asking, is there anything I can do if I bought an EV and I install a plug? I install a charger in my home. There is no direct credit for that. There's no direct credit for a charger. However, if the installer will write a notice saying that the components they're installing support 200 amps or more, 30% discount, 30% credit, up to $600. So 200 amps or more for what I'm calling electrical sub-panels. Okay, and so if they install, I don't know about central AC. We do split units here, split AC units. I haven't read enough to see if those count. I don't think they do. I think it needs to be a whole home central AC like they do on the mainland. But there is some credits for a central AC unit. The same 30% up to $600.
But it's not part of that one.
Each of these is different. So 1, 2, 3 can each get $600. Yeah. Yeah. This is one right here. Natural gas propane water heater, natural gas propane water boiler. That's one. But the central AC, the water heater, water boiler, and the components needed to support a resident energy, 200 amps or more.
Only if they install it on the year that they have, the year tax year, right?
Yes.
If it's an existing, they don't claim for it.
Tell me more. Rephrase that.
If it's existing, like say they.
Oh, they put it in the
put
past.
it in the past.
No, it's got to be. They put them in 24.
Okay.
Yeah, they did them in the tax year. I got you. I'm following now.
Because sometimes they say,
Oh, I bought them 5 years ago.
And
Not quite.
It is energy efficient. Blah
Yeah.
blah blah.
Yeah. The energy efficient stuff. When we use that word, I think our client. I don't know, but I think our clients are going to think of Energy Star. If it's appliance specific credits, they're going to get that from the retailer. They're going to get that from the energy company. But I have seen people coming. Oh, here's all my receipts for my Energy Star fridge and my this or my windows here. And aren't I going to get? Well, actually, I'm sorry. Windows, exterior windows and skylights, they do get a 30% credit on. Additional to, whatever. If HECO is giving them something, if there's a rebate on the purchase that they're getting. So 30% of qualified energy improvements. The big ones are going to be central AC, exterior windows and doors, and electrical components with 200 amps or more. Okay, so those are new these last couple of years. I don't know if they're going to stay or if they're going to go. They seem kind of small. They're not big money stuff, but $600 is $600, and you can stack them. So it's not like it's nothing. But the two things to note: it is 30% of qualified energy improvements. So you wouldn't spend $1,800 to max out this credit. You can't just spend $600 to get a $600 credit. But I think this is pretty straightforward. All right, and so what else we got? We got some additional credits. This is kind of just the ones where we're moving a little bit quicker. Child independent care credit. You got 12 and younger, so the young kids that are in after school care, or really young ones that are in preschool, daycare, that kind of stuff. Both the taxpayer must have earned income. So if it's a joint couple, both must have earned income. I did several years ago do a client where, both spouses worked, but one had a business that was at a loss. That was not considered earned income. They were not able to take this credit. Even though they were both working, but it's just that, the spouse lost money this year, so didn't have any income, wasn't able to take the 20% on the, I believe it's $3,000 per child, up to 2 kids this year. It's not the good one that was a couple years ago. It's just the regular one. We need the EIN and the GE number for the care provider. If it's auntie, uncle, grandma, unless they're really jumping through all the hoops, that's not gonna fly, because we gotta go tattle on, say, hey, grandma got all this money this year. Okay, so that's the child independent care credit. Adoption credit. The adoption credit for, I think this is the 2023 number. I don't think this is the most updated number. $15,950. For the adoption credit, it is on what you spend. So on lawyers and on travel and on court fees for adopting the child. And so you do get a credit for every dollar that's actually expensed. If you are adopting a special needs child, you get the full $15,950 regardless of the actual spend amount. This adoption credit, takes place in the year it is finalized. The expenses can be accumulated over multiple years. So unlike the other one, this one can be multiple years accumulated, and in the final year, in the year it becomes final, you can put up to this number spent. Special needs children will get the full amount regardless of the amount spent. But right now, my understanding is that adoption is more than that anyways. So they're spending that regardless. Okay, so that's the adoption credit. The foreign tax credit, this is the simple credit where if you pay dollars to another country's tax authority, you get to write them off on American, or you don't have to pay those same dollars to America. The things that I want you guys to know is that you do not require the 1116 if it's under $300 for head of household or single, or if it's under $600 for married filing joint. You just check the box that says no 1116 required and move on with your day. If there is 1116 required, so it's more than $300, we do have to allocate and say how much income was earned in this other country and how much tax was paid. Get that ratio to your total income, and you only get to take that ratio as a credit. So it's kind of a pain. So I just put on here, just slow down. Ask me or my dad, and we'll walk you through it and we'll teach you how to do it. But it's not something I can really do in a class style format without really going through some stuff. Here's some of the credits that I called not real earlier. Okay, the fuel credit. Really, the fuel credit is for farmers that are using tractors and that don't have dye in their fuel, because that's just what the rules are. So it's not really for fishermen or for we do. I know there are a couple construction workers that will fill their diesel up with non-dyed equipment, but it's a small credit. We're talking pennies per gallon, and it's a confusing credit. So You know, I'm really not a big fan of the fuel credit. I think you can get in more trouble than it's worth. Credits for the elderly and disabled, another one that's not real. They have to have Social Security less than $7,000 for an entire year. AGI less than $20,000. I'm not seeing anybody getting Social Security these days is already above the 7K, unless they just didn't have any earned income during their life, any Social Security pay in. Okay, and then so this one is not real. I once or twice a year I'll have somebody call me and ask, oh, do you guys fill out the credit for elderly and disabled? I say not really, because most people aren't hitting these really low numbers. Now we have the mortgage interest credit, aka the mortgage credit certificate, MCC. This is the one where a state agency will allow a home buyer to purchase a mortgage certificate, and usually it's not always, but on that big green paper that they have, it's like a legal page, it will say how much of this credit, this mortgage interest credit, they will get. I've seen 20% a lot of the time, but it doesn't have to be 20%. That just happens to be what I see every time. And you do have to reduce the amount of mortgage interest by the amount of credit that they're getting. So on a $10,000 mortgage interest, you'd get a $2,000 credit and an $8,000 deduction on the Schedule A. And credits are always better than deductions. We're going to go over that in just a little bit. So we have to reduce the Schedule A by any amount. I think this is the last part of my credits. Nope, we got a little bit more. So what credits did we talk about? The big ones, the child tax credit and additional child tax credit. Here's where I put the age in. I should put it in the earlier one. But most parents get this credits for their kids under the age of 17. Earned income tax credits, you got to make sure you ask questions and documents. Oopsies. Okay. We got the education credit. Again, the American Opportunity Tax Credit, that's the good one. The Lifetime Learning Credit, it's got a lot less restrictions, but I don't think it's as good. And the income limits are 90 or 180. Those are the upper limits. There are lower limits on there. Okay, electric vehicle. So if we're doing an electric vehicle purchase in 2024, we really should be getting a paperwork from the car dealership. The car dealership should be, providing the taxpayer a tax document with the car's VIN, that it's certified that it was made in America, and all that kind of good stuff. So we want to check this page here, and even if the credit was taken to the dealership, the IRS still wants us to input the electric vehicle information. Okay. Residential energy credits, the solar, that's the good stuff. We know the solar. Solar's been around. No changes. As of right now, solar 30% of materials and installations. That's the good stuff. Improvements may be worth $600 in credits. That's not bad. And you can stack them, so it may not only be $600 in credit. Okay. All right. We've got deductions and adjustments. So a question that our clients always ask us, is it